Good morning, everybody. Today is Thursday, March 26, 2020, and it is 10:03 a.m. And we have an emergency Moscow City Council meeting. And we will start right off with our agenda item, which is resolution to extend emergency order 20-02. And Gary, I will turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. As the mayor indicated, we have one agenda item today in the regular agenda. I will note that this is an emergency meeting, and because of the timeliness and emergency nature of the COVID-19 outbreak, the City Council may cause an emergency council meeting to be held pursuant to authorization of Idaho Code Section 74-2042. So that is the basis for the meeting. We gave the emergency notice as noted by that code. As a bit of background, council had authorized a week ago tomorrow an ordinance, the emergency powers ordinance, granting the mayor certain powers in cases of emergency. The mayor then issued his public health emergency order 20-01, which restricted gatherings of over 10 people and restricting or prohibiting dine-in, sit-down service at restaurants and bars. Over the course of the week, we experienced more COVID-19 outbreaks, both in the state of Idaho and in the state of Washington. In the last couple of days, we've seen 2 cases, confirmed cases in Whitman County, 1 case in Benoit County. I think they're up to 9 cases in Coeur d'Alene, 1 confirmed case in Nez Perce County, and a confirmed case in Idaho County. So with that, the mayor issued his second public health emergency order 20-02, and that emergency order restricted public gatherings and extended some of the restrictions beyond that. So what I would like to do, because this is an emergency meeting and this packet hasn't been published for very long, I'll follow the same protocol that I did last Friday, and that is I will read the emergency order number 20-02, which is good for 7 days under Idaho Code and the city's emergency ordinance, emergency powers ordinance. What we're here to talk about today is once that emergency order has been read, there is a draft resolution in your packet. That draft resolution has one purpose, and that is to ask the council if they will extend emergency order number 20-02 for the same time frame as emergency order number 20-01, that it will expire on May 5th. I know there was a question by council whether that emergency order or either of these emergency orders could be withdrawn or rendered effective by action of the council before that, and that is true. So should the COVID-19 outbreak mitigate and the council doesn't see a need for going with the emergency orders through May 5th, then the council could terminate them early. So there is flexibility there. So, City of Moscow Public Health Emergency Order 20-02, mass gatherings, schools, churches, gyms, tattoo parlors, barber shops, and salons, March 24th, 2020. Whereas on March 13th, 2020, Idaho Governor Brad Little declared a state of emergency due to COVID-19, which is still in effect. And whereas on March 13th, 2020, President of the United States issued an emergency declaration for the country in response to the increasing number of COVID-19 cases within the U.S., which is still in effect. And whereas on March 13th, 2020, Moscow Mayor Bill Lambert issued a local emergency proclamation declaring a local disaster emergency due to the occurrence and imminent threat to public health and safety arising from the effects of the 2019 novel coronavirus, COVID-19, pursuant to Idaho Code 46-1011 and other relevant sections of Idaho Code. And whereas on March 16th, 2020, the Moscow City Council adopted Resolution 2020-05, authorizing continuation of Mayor Lambert's local emergency proclamation until May 5th, 2020. And whereas on March 20th, 2020, the Council for the City of Moscow adopted an ordinance enacting a new Chapter 11 to Title I of the Moscow City Code, setting forth the authority, purpose, and intent of emergency powers to address the threat of COVID-19. And whereas on March 20th, 2020, Mayor Lambert issued the first Public Health Emergency Order number 20-01, instituting regulations regarding mass gatherings, restaurants, and bars to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. And whereas on March 21st, 2020, Whitman County, which is located on the western Moscow city limits, announced its first cases of COVID-19. And whereas on March 23rd, 2020, Spokane County, which is located less than 79 miles from Moscow, reported it has 29 confirmed cases of COVID-19. And whereas on March 23rd, 2020, Washington Governor Jay Inslee issued a stay-at-home, stay-healthy order for all of Washington State, which will be effective for a minimum of 2 weeks. And whereas on March 23rd, 2020, the state of Idaho reported 50 confirmed cases of COVID-19, 3 of which are located in Kootenai County, which is located less than 80 miles to the north of Moscow. And whereas the Department of Health and Human Services Centers for Disease Control is reporting that as of March 24th, 2020, the United States has 44,183 confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 544 total deaths. I would remind the council that these numbers are as of the issuance date of this order. Those numbers have increased since that time.
Thank you for clarifying, Gary.
Whereas both the CDC, the federal government, and the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare and the Idaho North Central Health District have recommended practices to prevent the rapid spread of COVID-19, including social distancing, and on March 18th, 2020, Governor Brad Little adopted those recommendations for the state of Idaho. The recommendations include that individuals practice social distancing by not gathering in groups of more than 10 people and that they avoid eating at bars, restaurants, and food courts. And whereas the risk of community spread throughout the city of Moscow is a continued threat, especially due to our unique location in Idaho and our close proximity to states and locations where there is a large number of confirmed COVID-19 cases and evidence of community spread. And whereas the spread of COVID-19 continues to threaten the life and health of the public, and public health is imperiled by the person-to-person spread of COVID-19, and the reduction of opportunities for person-to-person transmission of COVID-19 is necessary to combat the spread of the disease. And whereas the inability for certain businesses to follow the recommended social distancing guidelines due to the very nature of their business calls for this additional regulation to help do our part to slow the spread of COVID-19. And whereas the rapid spread of COVID-19 to date requires a more aggressive, proactive response in order to protect the public and resources to address the supply issues we as a nation and state currently face. Now therefore, I, Bill Lambert, Mayor of Moscow, Idaho, by virtue of the authority vested in me by Moscow City Code 1-11-05B and the common law authority to protect the public in the event of an emergency, in order to encourage and enforce social distancing and reduce the potential for spread of the COVID-19 virus, hereby order as follows. Number 1, Public Health Emergency Order number 20-01 remains in full force and effect in accordance with said order and Moscow City Council Resolution 2020-06. Number 2, there shall be no gatherings in groups of more than 10 persons within a facility within the boundaries of the city of Moscow, which shall also apply to the following. A, educational institutions, private and public, through April 20th, 2020, or any extension granted by the Idaho State Board of Education. B, any and all expressive and associative activities, including assembly and church and religious organization activities. You will recall that those were exceptions to the initial Order 20-01. Number 3, including without limitation gyms and gymnasiums, workout facilities, health clubs, athletic clubs, fitness centers, and health spas within the city limits of the city of Moscow shall close to members, guests, patrons, customers, and the general public. Gym includes any building, room, venue, or location designed to facilitate physical exercise with or without the use of specialized equipment, which includes but is not limited to aquatic centers, yoga studios, martial arts studios, and massage parlors. Number 4, tattoo parlors, barber shops, and salons. All businesses or establishments that renders the services by barbers, hairdressers, cosmeticians, nail technicians, electrologists, aestheticians, eyelash technicians, and tattoo and piercing providers within the city limits of the city of Moscow shall close to members, guests, patrons, customers, and the general public. This includes, but is not limited to, barber shops, beauty shops, hairdressing salons, beauty salons, nail salons, spas, and tattoo or piercing establishment. Exceptions. Number 5, this order shall not apply to child care / daycare services and child care / daycare facilities. Nothing in this order shall constrain the duties and powers of the city, the mayor, or other governmental agencies. Number 6, penalty. In accordance with Moscow City Code Section 1-11-10, any person who knowingly violates the provisions of this order shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. This emergency order shall take effect at 12:00 a.m. on March 25th, 2020, and shall remain in full force and effect for 7 days, subject to be extended by City Council through resolution unless it is terminated or modified at an earlier date. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand on this 24th day of March 2020, Bill Lambert, Mayor. Attest, Lori M. Hopkins, City Clerk. That is the Public Health Emergency Order 20-02. I'd invite the council discussion, at the conclusion of which I would ask that the council authorize the attached resolution, which extends this emergency order past its 7 days and makes it effective up until May 5th, 2020.
Okay, who would like to start? One of the things I will say, I'll start off first on this, as Gary just said, our emergency order 20-02 will stay extended until May the 5th. So sometimes it's confusing. I don't know how many different people I talked to about it. When I originally set this up, they thought it was a 7-day order, and I said, no, it's, the resolution says one thing, but then we've got another emergency order number that goes in hand with that. So sometimes that's confusing to folks, and it's too bad we can't do the same thing all at once, but we have to have 2 different documents in order to make it legally right by our ordinances and different things that we're doing.
If I may, Your Honor, too, I should have mentioned that, as everyone knows, Governor Little yesterday issued an order of emergency on the pandemic. He indicated that there would be an order issued by the Department of Health and Welfare yesterday afternoon. That order was issued. It is essentially a self-isolation order for the state of Idaho. The order itself is contained on the city's website under the coronavirus tab. So I would invite everyone to take a look at that. So many of the things that the mayor's health proclamation, public health emergency order will be covered by the governor's order as well. So because the emergency order was issued prior to the governor's order, that's why we want to have the resolution extending it.
Sandra?
So just a couple questions on that. I believe that you have a meeting with state officials today. During that, do you anticipate finding out ways to help our local businesses out and what direction we can give so they can have assistance during this time?
That's a good question, Sandra, and yes, Gary and I will be attending a conference call with Governor Little later on this afternoon. And there's a lot of things happening. Congress just passed a $2.2 trillion relief package, so to speak, and that goes for corporations as well as states, municipalities, and they talk within that about unemployment, the Jobs Service Office that can help people with unemployment numbers, so on and so forth. What I will tell you, and that also ties in with the Small Business Association, and what I will say is this, folks, is that I was watching the jobs numbers this morning. They call them the unemployment rate numbers, and we normally run about 250,000 a week, which is pretty standard. And this morning it was 1.328 million people. And so the reason I put that number out there is there's a bunch of these lines being flooded with calls. So be patient. It will eventually go through. Will you get annoyed? Yes, I'm sure of that, and I haven't tried any of these things, but we all need to be patient and be calm because it is there working for us, and they're just getting these things out. So Sandra, when we know more information, we will be sending information out to counselors and probably have a press release so that our local folks know. I'm sure the state will have, but I think that's something we need to do as well, Gary.
Thank you.
Well, for my part, recognizing that this is having major detrimental effects on small businesses, their owners, and their employees, I think our greater responsibility is to the health and safety of the citizens of town. So I think we should adopt the resolution extending the emergency order 20-02 until May 5th, 2020.
Second.
Okay,
I need to weigh in before we
hang on a second.
go
Who
there.
was the second? Was it Sandra? or-
It was
okay,
Sandra.
Okay, yes, and we'll kick up the discussion, and we'll start the discussion with you, Gina.
Thank you. I feel the need to bring up the fact that there are at least half of us who are indeed small business owners here and are feeling the effects of this effort. So as far, or this emergency order and then Governor Little's mandate as well, I don't think that it's time to divide our community. I think it's time to pull together and recognize that everybody is going to be impacted by this. It is still and remains the right thing to do to keep us all healthy, because if we don't have that, we don't have anything else either. So I support the extension, but know that we are all aware and are working every minute of the day trying to figure out how to minimize the effects to individuals and businesses at the same time.
Sandra?
Yep. And to add to that, in addition to the small businesses, I feel like I sort of represent the nonprofit world as well. And that's also a small group that's really struggling to make ends meet. And yet, the folks that I visited with and am in contact with, they understand that this is necessary. They're also looking for support and help, as we are where I work. But I can't reiterate enough what Gina said. This is absolutely the right thing to do because health is first. And the reason I asked my question earlier about what's coming through from the state and the federal government, because I think folks will need help kind of finding their way through this, and I want them to know that we are with them and that we are struggling as well and that we are worried, but this is our first priority, and thanks for your patience.
Absolutely. Brandy, I'm going to go with those on Zoom. Brandy, have you got some comments you'd like to make?
I think you're on mute, Brandy.
Yeah, unmute, Brandy.
Thank you.
Okay, there you go.
So I want to comment, I know we've all seen it, but on, I believe it was March 16th, large group, over 80 independent restaurant owners across the state, including 15 restaurant owners here in Moscow, sent a letter to the governor requesting action to actually close restaurants, believing that this will be the best thing for those businesses in the immediate and long term. So knowing that we have a significant amount of support from our local business owners, recognizing this is going to be affect us all economically, but that letter to the governor, I want to make sure everyone's aware that there is support in that restaurant community, including locally here.
Thank you, Brandy. Ann, how about you? Let's let you weigh in on this right now.
I support it. I am proud that we've taken steps in advance of the governor issuing what he did yesterday, which I support as well. I just wanted to ask again. So I had a chance to have a couple of conversations this week, and I appreciated you too, Gary, talking to you yesterday about utilities, which I keep bringing up because I think in talking about relief or what it looks like for us to kind of acknowledge the hit that a lot of businesses and individuals are taking, I think this is something that's directly in our purview. So Gary, would you mind giving a recap kind of the conversation that we had yesterday?
Is that all right, Your Honor?
I tell you what, Gary, why don't you do that recap when I turn it over to you for some reports? How would that be? That way we can get this resolution in front of us. And you'll hear more on this because Gary's got some comments on it as well as I do. So, but we'll save that because he's going to do a report at the end of this thing once we get through with this resolution. With
That sounds great.
Okay, very good. Maureen, how about you? Maureen Laughlin. You'll have to go off mute, Maureen. You're on mute, dear.
It's a tab at
We
the
go.
lower left.
There you go,
I had
Maureen,
two
we
different
see you
questions.
now.
Okay, I totally agree. I think. Okay, I totally agree. I think.
There's two.
2 or 3, yeah.
Somebody's not on mute, we're having a tough time hearing you,
Okay,
Maureen.
I totally agree. I'm just telling you right now, this is not working well.
Okay, well, we'll go with that. Thank you for that. Maureen's on board with us there, so good. Thank you for that. Maureen. Geez, I could hear myself twice, didn't know I talked that funny. Okay, well, we've heard from all counselors. Art's made a motion to adopt a resolution extending order number 2002 until May the 5th, 2020. And Sandra seconded that. I'll start the roll with Brandy.
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
Maureen. She said she would already, so.
Aye,
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Sandra.
Aye.
aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Arthur.
Aye.
Okay, so that's 6 unanimous votes, so we have that resolution to extend emergency order 20-02. Gary, and before I turn it over to you for reports, there's a couple of things I want to speak about. One thing for the folks out there watching, Gripman Hospital has got a hotline, and I would like everybody to write this number down, and it is 883-4109. And if any of our residents or anybody feels like they have the symptoms or are sick, you can call this hotline 24/7 every day. A nurse will be taking a call. If they don't answer immediately, leave a number and a message. They will call you back and they will walk you through how to get a test and the requirements, the things that you need to personally go through. And if you feel sick, doesn't mean you're going to get tested. There's some various criteria that will be asked of you, but anyway, that's available. I did talk to a citizen a couple of days ago and walked her through this process, but I wanted to make sure and get that out. And I also wanted to say something. We've had many various citizens in Moscow do many different things. For example, we've seen in the newspaper today about Sue Scott working on mask covers for those folks, as well as I got a call from somebody that's converting his business into actually making masks as well. And and that person's getting hold of our health department as well as our local hospital. And I've also had a lady send me an email. It was very warm-hearting, and she said in this email, although, and this has been a few days ago, that she didn't necessarily agree with what we were doing. She appreciated the fact that we were doing something. And then she went on and said, oh, by the way, I do have the means that I'd be more than happy to pay for somebody's services, water services or garbage or whatever, that cannot afford it. And I was really thought that was real heartening, heartfelt for me to hear that. And Gary's going to talk a little bit about it. So now I'll turn that over to you, Gary, for your reports.
Thank you. I see that we're running out of time on our Zoom meeting here, so if we lose you, we will take a recess and then reconnect. First, I wanted to talk about the city's response to the COVID-19. All city facilities are closed. We moved into Tier 3 of our pandemic response. If you look on our website, you can see if you still want to pay your bill in person, you can put a drop out in the box behind City Hall. But there is information about facilities or services still offered to the public. please go to the city's website, www.ci.moscow.id.us, for continuous updates. Our essential city services will continue. Permits and construction support will continue online. Utility billing will also continue. As indicated, the council has directed that we will not move forward with any termination of utility provisions. Let's see. Can we take a quick recess, Your Honor?
Ladies and gentlemen, we will take a 5-minute recess so we can regroup back to Zoom.
Like being out of camera range.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is 10:37, and we will resume our emergency meeting, and I'm going to turn the reports over to Gary.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, I left off, we were talking about utility billing, that people can call the utility billing line. Again, go to the city's website, www.ci.moscow.id.us. We've been exploring at council's behest and the mayor to determine areas that we perhaps can provide some relief to our citizens because of this economic downturn and what is happening with the COVID-19. So we're looking at some possibilities. One of the things that I wanted to reiterate, and I've indicated to individual council members and the mayor, we can determine the financial impact to the city of these, any sort of discounted rates and that sort of thing. We do have to provide essential services, so any proposal will have to make sure that we're able to continue with that. My anticipation is, and I am working with the finance department right now to look at the impacts of some potential discounts, maybe to businesses that were forced to be closed because of the emergency orders, and they're working on that. We should have that ready to bring to council on April 6th. As I indicated before, at council direction and mayor's direction, there will be no shut off of city utilities during the period of the emergency orders. The reason that May 5th was chosen for the termination date of these emergency orders is we will be having a regular city council meeting on May 4th. So if it is nip and tuck, whether it needs to continue, the council can make that decision on at the council meeting on May 4th. As I indicated previously, there are provisions in both of these orders and resolutions by the council that if things change, they can be terminated early. One of the things the mayor talked about was an offer, a generous offer by a patron to pay someone else's utility bill who is unable to during the period of time of the emergency order. We are looking into that. The city has the ability to take donations at this time, but we need to formalize a process. The issue is during what period of time, how do you apply any donation to the purpose for which the donor wanted it, and that is relief for someone who can't afford to pay those bills. We'll also be working with finance on that, and we'll have some proposal and recommendation for the April 6th council meeting. One thing that has been discussed is reduction of property taxes. That's been suggested a couple times by email. Property taxes are not something the city can reduce. The property tax levy is submitted to the county in September of the year prior to the property taxes being levied. So the property taxes that are levied at this point were approved and put in place by Latah County back in September of 2019. Many of those property taxes have already been paid or are in process of being paid. So there's really no short-term solution that would include reduction of property taxes. As the public also knows, there is a circuit breaker provision and the ability to talk to the county commissioners about reductions of their property taxes when they sit as a board of equalization. I would invite people to approach Latah County about that potential. In the meantime, I've asked staff to look into different ways, see what services we can provide to the public during this tumultuous period. Parks and Recreation is working on some online activities for youth that hopefully will help people cope with the downtime when the kids aren't in school and can't utilize playgrounds, since playgrounds, city, county, and school district playgrounds were declared off limits. Also, we have some things coming through community events and arts that are still have more to do with activities and services to provide to the public that we can during this period, not necessarily financial relief. I did refer someone to Gina, who is the executive director of the Partnership for Economic Prosperity. There are press releases on the city's website. You can go to the PEP website or contact Gina directly. There are federal and state programs, perhaps some SBA loans, relief programs are still in their infancy. The mayor alluded to a $2.2 trillion relief package from the federal government. Anything like that takes a while to digest. Gina can help you move through that. I know the Chamber of Commerce has some outreach going on right now. We will certainly do everything we can. The city itself, for the edification of the public, is coding our time. Any time that is utilized to meet the COVID-19 outbreak, we're coding that time. There may be some relief from the federal government in the form of a grant or a FEMA-type reimbursement. So we're setting ourselves up to be able to claim that if it's appropriate and if a program is in place for us to do that. So with that, I'd answer any questions.
There's another point that I want to make too, because there's federal money that's going to come down to states, 50% to states and 50% to counties. So counties are going to have some availability of monies out there too. We do not know at this time what that will be for. So we'll just have to wait and see on that, Gary. One of the things two things that I'd like to say to our citizens out there, we've got many citizens that are helping other citizens. And it's really wonderful, and in this time of need, this community is absolutely great at helping each other out and working together to make things happen. As the mayor, it's very warm-hearting for me to see that. I encourage people to stay with doing that, and just like I've said, I don't know how many times, don't panic, stay calm. We're going to work through this, and yes, this is a temporary thing. But if we do a good job on it, and I think we're doing a good job on it, well, we're going to move forward, and it's going to end quicker for us. Jane, with that, you said
I
something.
want to share, similar to what we were talking about, what you were mentioning earlier about city people helping citizens and stuff. I want to absolutely acknowledge and support and give huge props to city staff who is actually, alongside of me, helping the smaller communities in Latah County figure their way through this. And Lori Hopkins has been absolutely instrumental in helping at least 3 or 4 of the other communities. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that in this scary, uncharted territory, it's nice to know that there are people that are still willing to reach out and help everybody navigate. So,
Questions before Gary?
This is Brandy. I just wanted to kind of add on to some of the efforts that I've seen in the community as well for supporting each other through this. And there are a couple Facebook groups anyone out there might want to take a look at. One is called Quarantine Support on the Palouse. And these are just groups of us, of citizens, trying to help each other. And it's pretty incredible. People are posting, I have extra of this if someone needs it, or hand sanitizer just showed up at Winco today, all kinds of things, sharing needs and ideas and supporting your neighbors. There's also a group called Help the Palouse, and that is a local person who started a site that gives information about how you can support local businesses through this time, with direct links to their websites, for example, the restaurants that have to-go orders. So there's a lot of grassroots, citizen level efforts to really help us all get through that. And, you know, we are citizens, we are you, and I think everyone, of course, is making sacrifices and doing what we can to support each other. I know this has, as Gina was mentioning, this has had a huge impact on the city staff as well. And they have really, with these changes with all the city facilities now being closed and adjusting to how that looks, and really putting in a lot of time to make sure that those essential services are continuing, police, fire, everything. So I appreciate everybody's sacrifices and efforts to help us all get through this.
Thank you, Brandy.
I have a question for Brandy and probably anyone else. I guess
This
my
is
question
Maureen
is,
speaking.
there is a series of different activities that people are doing to support people as a result of this virus. My question is anyone working on a centralized place that someone could go and look? Because if people don't use Facebook, then you've got a problem. And so my question is there some other way? I'm not sure who would be that, and whether or not anyone at the city has the time people could just put it in there. There'd be a web page that just says all the different resources that are available right now.
Gary, you want to respond?
Yeah, we don't have anything set up that way right now. It's certainly something we can look into. We are trying to push out more information, as you've seen. You've seen a ton of press releases come out in the last week. We will continue to step that up and get that information out. I've reached out to Chief Fry, who has worked with the faith-based community in the past for some of those outreach programs, and we're trying to see if that could be a resource as well. So if it's possible for us to act as a conduit for that, we can certainly look into that.
I might add too that I know that Chamber of Commerce, they have, right now, if you go to their website, even if you're not on Facebook, they have a list of what local businesses are doing, who's doing takeout and so forth. And I know that the director there is been very busy in trying to support businesses and create these centralized things. So Maureen, I would suggest to contacting Jenny Ford, the director there, and to find out what currently exists. And I know that they would be more than happy to be a platform for consolidated information for people.
In addition to that, there's news in the newspaper almost daily on the same thing that Brandy just said.
Right.
In the Daily News as well as the Lewiston Trib.
I would add to Brandy's statement about the Chamber of Commerce. We, PEP and all of the regional entities like Soweta and the Pullman Chamber and the City of Pullman and Moscow City and the Moscow Chamber have all worked in the last week to put together regional information. So I would even invite you to go to the Pullman Chamber of Commerce, take a look at that, the City of Pullman, Moscow, go to PEP. I mean, we all have kind of the same information available, and we do update that all the time. So we're pulling together.
Well, with that, folks, unless somebody else has something dying, we need to move on
Right.
to adjourn to executive session per Idaho Code 74-206, 1B and 1F. And this meeting will not conclude afterwards, but I need a motion from that.
So moved.
Okay, Art made the motion, Gina made a second. And I will start the roll call. Brandy, I'll start the roll call with you on this.
Hi.
Ann,
She's not on.
she's not, okay, Maureen,
Aye.
okay, Sandra,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Arthur.
Aye.
Okay, with that, what we will do, we need to take a little recess, maybe for 5 minutes, so those that are not part of the executive session can leave, and Zach will probably have to restart us. Is that correct, Gary?
I think we'll stay on with our meeting at this point. He will terminate the broadcast.
Okay, so
however.
we will not resume this meeting once we're done. Thank you
you.
all.